Hello, everybody. We're going to be going over quality documentation, and that hits on communication and documentation, documenting in THERAP, journal event reporting, or GER, previously referred to as IRs, provider and staff responsibility and expectations. So the most important thing you need to remember at all times is if it isn't documented, then it didn't happen. Correctly documenting will protect the quality of the work that you do as a support person, provider, and or staff person. The more that we document, the better we can support the individual that we serve. It is important to document anything that happens. There's multiple ways to do it in THERAP. We have our T-logs, we have SCOM. You can send an email, write it in the daily log notes, write it in the behavior tracking comments, in the ISSP comments. There's a multitude of ways that we can track things. If you think it's worthy of an incident report, that's definitely something you can fill out. If we determine that it's not reportable, it's something we can still save to their file so we know in the future. So just documenting is the most important. If you have conversations with doctors, if you have conversation with other members of their team, just having that down, because of course, if you never wrote it down, then there's no way to prove that it happened. We have a multitude of things that are documented in THERAP. We try to document as much as possible because we are able to keep it all in one central place. You're able to access it. We're able to access it. We don't use as much paper, and it's a lot harder to lose things when you document it on THERAP. So we have our daily logs and attendance. We have our individual goal tracker, ISSP and BISSP, medical protocols. For the most part, for the medical protocols, you don't have to document unless it's stated that you do. They are just there for information about the person, whether it's eating, choking, fall risk. We have just information in there. Our medical documentation. So we have our MAR, we keep track of BM tracking, appointments, weight, and any other kind of medical documentation that we need, we can store it in there as well. Incident reports or GERS. Provider trainings are also kept in THERAP. You should be able to access your training log. And I have actually added the annual documentation as well, like your insurance, doing business as, your professional liability insurance. And there is a video on provider training. So let me know if you need that, or if you go to our YouTube site, you will see that provider training to show you how to access that. And that's something you want to look at least monthly, just to make sure that you're not behind on anything, and let us know if you are, and we can get you what you need. We have individual demographics and emergency contacts, health and safety assessment, comprehensive life review, our residential assessment, any guardian information, provider information, and fire drills. We also do our home monitorings and any other tracking that is person specific to that individual that may need to be done. Documenting communications. So it's really important if you are talking to, even when we have conversations, we may document when we're talking to hospitals, APS, law enforcement, any medical providers, could be a lawyer, just anything where you may need to document a conversation was had about the individual and what you spoke about. So one thing to remember before calling any outside agencies, you want to have any identifying information for the individual, details what you're reporting, and then documented times of discovery observation. One thing you need to make sure is, or one thing you're able to access through THERAP is their emergency data sheet. And if you go to the homepage and click on the left side, there is an emergency data sheet, and it has all their basic information that one would need if you're calling a hospital, if you're calling, APS, law enforcement. It kind of gives date of birth, name, that kind of stuff if you're not familiar with the person. During the call, you want to document who you spoke or interacted with. Try to get at least a first name, times the call were made, any call number or case number, that's very important. If you ever have to call the non-emergency line or law enforcement and APS, they'll give you a case number, call number. We want to have that because we have to have that for the IR. Any instructions that were given and necessary follow-up next steps. And these things you want to make sure you document if you're submitting an IR, that they are in the IR itself, or we'll have to reach out and get that information afterwards. Documentation, communication, and HIPAA. Always remember to adhere to HIPAA when communicating with anyone in regards to a client. Be mindful of your surroundings. Never assume that communication is safe or protected unless you take steps to ensure that it is. We as SKSF use Proofpoint encryption services for our email security. So if you ever need to send email, if it's too large to SCOM, because it is encrypted through SCOM, but sometimes it may be too large. So if you can't do that, just email your supervisor, Marcy, whoever you're working with, to send you an encrypted email, and you can reply back to that and send any protected documentation. Sending SCOMs through Therap automatically encrypts and protects any information exchanged. Documentation should never be left unattended while in the community. So if you're out doing SCC or you're working on paperwork, we don't ever want to take medical documentation and leave them somewhere someone else could find them. Staff should be using Therap as much as possible for documentation. It will alternate the amount of hard copies that are needed. I suggest that the same for providers. There are a few things that we have to keep hard copy at this moment, which would be our control count sheet and our cash ledgers. But hopefully we can come up with a way to incorporate that into Therap as well in the future. If documentation or other medication is lost or stolen and there's an incident report needed, it needs to be completed immediately, and all appropriate parties involved need to be alerted. So for a host home provider, you would call us on the on-call phone, report it. A police report would need to be done as well if someone stole it. We'll kind of tell you what to do. And then of course, staff would need to alert their higher up, and they will get instruction on what they need to do. And then of course, an incident report just stating all the information. Client documentation should never be shared with other individuals and services. That is very important because I know sometimes we have housemates, and anytime that we're doing anything for one individual, the other individual should not be in the room. So if we're talking about that person's personal stuff, person-specific medical appointments, sometimes it can't be helped, but we should do our best to make sure that it doesn't cross over and we keep those things separate. So CSRs, those types of things, home visits, things should be kept one individual at a time. ISP programs. So it stands for Individualized Service Plan Program. And we use this for our BISSP, ISSP, daily tracking attendance, fire drills, and medical protocols. I know sometimes it gets really confusing because there is a lot in there, but that is the best way we have right now to put all that information where it's easily accessible. Like I said earlier, not all ISP programs need to be tracked. Typically, if there is a medical protocol that you have to be tracking on, we will let you know, or Marcy will let you know. For the most part, it's just the ISP, BISSP, your daily logs, and those fire drills. Sometimes you'll also see an extra one in there, like we have our home monitorings, which you can see. That's not something that you as a provider have to do. That is something for us, but you're able to see that it's in there. It's important that you acknowledge the ISP programs in Therap, and it's just like signing a paper copy. Before you acknowledge it, you must read through them. If you have any questions regarding them, you're going to contact your director, coordinator, or host home supervisor before you acknowledge them. As you read through the ISP program, pay attention to teaching methods and instructions for tracking. If there's any errors, please let us know. There is a button where you can send an SCOM, and it links the ISP program directly to the SCOM. So if there's a specific one where you're like, hey, If this isn't right, you can put that in the SCOM and then we know which one to update. And we'll resend it, like once we approve it, it'll have you acknowledge it again. If you accidentally acknowledge it and there was something wrong, we can still change it. Just let us know. The sooner you do that, the better, because once you start tracking, there's only certain things that we can change. So it gets really complicated. Daily logs and attendance. Daily logs should be thorough, habilitative, and person-centered. When anyone reads the daily logs, they should get a clear picture of the individual's day. And one thing to remember is if they refuse, like if you say, hey, let's go to the library and go look at some books, or let's go participate in this community gathering, they don't have to go, but when they refuse, you should let them know what was offered. The state looks at those and they want to see that the HHP is offering things in the community and encouraging them to be as big a part of community as they can be. Of course, there are individuals who just want to play games all day, and that's fine, but those things still should be offered and encouraged and documented in the daily log notes. We don't want to see just John Doe sat home and played games, John Ho sat down and played games, John Doe didn't do anything. Those, and it doesn't have to be every day of the week, but at least once, twice, depending on the person and their ability. You can kind of gauge it at that. So we don't have to see, I offered this every single day, a couple days a week. That's perfectly fine. If you have any questions, please let me know or your home supervisor, and we can go over and look at your notes and let you know if there's anything that needs to be improved upon. HHPs do not include any activities engaged in during day program, only what was done in the host home. Again, the state does not count the day program as the host home day. You can say that the person was in day program or even what they did in day program, but that's not going to count for state as far as when they look at what the individual did and count that as, oh, host home provider. They're going to ask what the host home provider was doing to encourage and have them integrated into the community. We're looking for additional information not documented in other places on THERAP. So this means you don't have to double document. You don't have to talk about the behaviors unless there's something more that you want to add that you don't have a place for in the behavior tracking. Again, for the goal that they have, we're not looking for you to repeat yourself a million times. This includes community outings, interactions, independent living skills used. So if they took themselves to their doctor's appointment themselves, if they went out to dinner with friends, if they went to visit family, they went shopping. The state doesn't count grocery shopping with your provider as like a community integration. So it has to be something where they do it on their own. It can't just be they went to the store, 4 times this week and that counts. Guidelines for filling out daily logs. So some things are, what did the client do well today? What did the client have difficulty with? How did we support the client throughout the day? For example, document what kind of promoting was provided during hygiene tasks, activities, declined activities. So, maybe they're not tracking their goals, not hygiene, but they do have an issue and you encourage them to take a shower because it's been 3 days. And they were like, no, I'm not taking a shower. So, maybe you encourage them again. So those are the kind of things we want to see. Like I encourage John Doe to take a shower as it's been 3 days. He declined. I asked him again later that afternoon and he finally showered. What activities do they engage in and communicate their likes, dislikes for activities? Maybe someone's really into cars and they just love cars. So maybe you took them to a car show. Maybe there was just a bunch of cars, like really nice classics. We see that sometimes in the town. You're like, oh, I took them to this place where they were having a car show and, they went around and looked at the cars and touched them. It doesn't mean, even if they're nonverbal or unable to communicate that way, but maybe they enjoyed it because they were going around looking at the cars, they waved at somebody. How did they engage in any activities? Were they counting, reading? Did they, interact? Did they refuse to do the activity? How did the client work on independent living skills? And those are those core skills that can be done in the house as well. It could be laundry, cleaning the house, grocery shopping. How did they work on communication today? Choices. What did we provide the client, especially when they're not wanting to participate? So maybe you give them a couple different activities that they can choose from for the week. These are the things that were offered, and they chose to do this. What did they achieve their goals, and what supports are needed? Did they refuse to work on their goals today? What supports were provided to get them to work on their goals, and what was the outcome? Some examples. Was there community interaction offered or participated in today? Individual wanted me to take them to KeyBank to get their P&A money for this month. We just went to the drive-through window since we were quarantined. After that, we stopped at Starbucks drive-through window to get a fun cup of coffee before going home. Individual was happy to get out of the house for a bit. Did they improve on their independent skills today? Individual fed both dogs twice, but I watered them. Individual helped with taking the dog outside a few times. So ADLs would be the individual got dressed in nice clean clothes. They brushed their hair, didn't brush their teeth yet. They have their glasses on. They are still looking for their cat purse and hasn't found it. And again, marking down those things that are out of the ordinary for the person. So if they have issues that usually they can't tie their shoes, and let's say they got it tied. It may not be the best tie, but they got it tied or they attempted. Those are the things we want to see. We want to see where they're trying and achieving better than before. If we have an individual who can tie their shoes, no problem, that's not something you want to put in the daily log notes, because we know that they can tie their shoe. That's not an issue for them. But if they knew how to tie their shoe and then all of a sudden they're having issues with their coordination or being able to tie it, that is something. So any increase or decline in their independence and things you worked on, we want to see those. So another one would be free time activities, choices that they made. The individual played card games and their music for a while this morning. Otherwise, they were busy with their project of making their cake. Asked them why they didn't play some music. They told me that they just wanted to concentrate on the cake, and that was the right thing for them to do. When I asked the individual if they wanted to watch Anderson Cooper with me tonight, the individual went to their bedroom to get on comfy PJs and watch it with me in the bedroom. So just sort of see what they're doing, making sure that they are enjoying themselves. Any choices, like maybe they decided that they wanted to do spaghetti tonight for dinner. Community interactions offered or participated in today. Again, this is where we want to see if you offered something. Even if they denied, we want to see those. So they had a good time getting out in the community. They took the individual to lunch, and then it tells, what the person ordered. The food was fun, but it was good. Then they brought the leftovers home to put in the fridge. They went to King Super to get edible cookie dough. It looks like this is something the individual wanted to go do. They weren't just grocery shopping. Like the individual was like, I want to go here and make some purchases. Individual helped put things into the car, and the house was brought and the groceries home. Then they went to Sam's. Individual wanted Dr. Pepper and their box of candy bars for themselves. I got what they needed for the house. Individual was helpful putting things in the car and taking things. This is great, but again, we don't want to see it's just going to the store or the grocery store. You can go to, maybe they like home things. So you go to the at-home store and they wanted some stuff for their bedroom. So we want to mix it out. Library, any kind of, festivals, carnivals, just art museums, things just kind of centered around what the person likes. So in here, it was daily log examples for day program. And it's just saying like where they went for day program. Did they interact with community members? And again, this is kind of what we're looking for. When we state like, do they interact with community members? we want to add this kind of stuff in our daily logs as well as host home providers. So they participated, practiced his kind and appropriate interaction skills while interacting with community members at the park. And they put down like how many times and how they did it was independently. It could be if you have to encourage, like, hi, say hi to Mr. Brown over here. Did they find anything interesting in the community? On the way to the park, the group stopped at Memorial Shrine so the individual could take a video of the Army tank that was on static display there. Individuals found the tank to be very interesting. And then in the comments, individual brought some art supplies home and they enjoyed working on his art project in Memorial Park independently. Individual participated in the physical activity while he willed himself with standby and physical assistance from the mentor while in Memorial Park. So this is what our day program people, SCC, are going to kind of look at and kind of get into the community to make sure that they're getting that community interaction as well. So BISSP and ISSP is always done daily. Even if there are no behaviors, you should always mark no or 0, depending on what kind of tracking you have. Same for ISSP, if they refused, if they didn't do what they were supposed to do to meet their goal, we want to see it's being done. If I have a BISSP that has blank spaces, when I send it to HRC, they will tell me that it needs to be done daily. This is not something that I just made up. We didn't think, oh, we want to make a left herder. We always get questioned, and then we have to go back and be like, hey, make sure you're documenting daily, because even though we know it's as a blank, maybe they didn't have any behaviors. They don't know if those days were missed or if it does mean there was no behaviors. So documenting daily. So everyone is going to have a different scoring method, just depending on their score. Some of them are yes, no, count, completion, whether decline, partially completed, oh my goodness, complete, or a level of independence. Following all prompts with the task is vital. If you don't understand, or if it's wrong, or if it's outdated, they have progressed from this goal. Please let us know if there is extra behaviors happening, if a certain behavior is not happening, and it's something we need. These can always be changed, and they should be updated. We do update them annually, but in the meantime, 6 months hits, and you're like, hey, we need to change this up, decrease the amount of things that we're doing, increase whatever it is. Make sure that communicating with your team in order to get those done. Because if it's not working, or if it's just a pointless goal at this point because they have completed it, we can move on to something bigger and better and more challenging. Teaching methods are always to be there, referenced by staff and HHP when needed. So this is just a step-by-step of how to help the individual. Yes, you may know as a provider if you've had them for ever, and this is a goal that you've been working on, but they're there in order to make sure that if they were ever to go into respite, whether it's emergency, you're going on vacation, that the person who is taking care of them knows exactly how to help them. So if any point you're like, the teaching methods aren't clear, we can do it better this way, we're missing a step, please tell us. That is why it's very important that you go over the ISSP and the BISSP, because you work with them on a daily basis. You may see something that we didn't, you may be able to explain it in a better way. We may have something wrong. So just make sure that you're communicating with your team members and making sure that those are correct. And same for, day program staff as well. They should be communicating if they see something that doesn't look right. We're all a team here, and we want to support the person as best we can. And if we have all input from all sides, that is the best way we're going to get this. So if you think it's important, then you should document it. Any information that goes beyond the scoring method should be explained in the comments section of the BISSP or the ISSP. If you don't have room, or you're not sure where to put it, so maybe it's a behavior that's new and you don't have anywhere to put it on the BISSP, document it in the daily log notes, and letting your supervisor know. And it may be something that we want to track if it continues. Some examples here. Did they have positive interactions with others while in the community? Yes, the individual said bye to the cashier at Walmart and they waved. Or it could be, no, they tried to attack some guy that was standing in line because he was breathing too loud. Did they work on enhancing their communication skills today? If yes, what supports did they need properly? A lot of times we'll have, even if it's just a yes or no, it'll say define it in the comments or explain it in the comments. And that's because we want extra information on it. Because we just need that to document. So yes, the individual worked on communication skills by using the words to let staff know what they needed. Staff helped individual communicate their wants and their needs by using words, gestures, pointing while at the store and while picking songs in the car. Individual participated in activities today, either at home or the community. They did in shape, color, and number identification activity with 2 verbal prompts, and they did it very well. And then in the comment it says, today the individual went to Walmart. They love looking at Christmas pajamas and Halloween costumes. And last, as they asked them what I should be for Halloween, as they put on some funny hats, individual picked out some panda bear socks and wanted to buy a blanket and some Christmas pajamas. They did not have enough money. Individual required many verbal prompts to the rest of the shopping trip, and they could only get the socks today. They really enjoyed when they found the Lion King book, looked at pictures, sang songs, and worked on their shapes, colors, numbers, and did a great job. Individuals loved singing a bunch of different Disney songs in the car, and they had a very good day today. Then as you see here, we have a few more examples, and this one's asking, it's very specific with no more than 2 prompts. And yes, they did meet the goal. They pulled their wallet out, counted their money, and they received support on how to plan a vacation. Please write in the comment section. So this one's asking, a lot of them asked in the comment section just to specify, so we're not just getting a yes answer. And then individual require prompting to save money and not to buy, prompting to buy, not buy a meal for home. Individual did not need prompts to save their money. They did talk about stuff about having saving for the next time they ate. And then here we have some BISSP examples. Just how many times did they get aggressive towards others? They had 3 episodes and they explained in the comments here. Did they engage in inappropriate touching? And then yes, they wanted to see what the behaviors were. Looks like they had 8 episodes. And they needed multiple prompts not to touch people's chest. And did they engage in self-interest behaviors? And then looks like, yeah, they had 2 episodes. So here we're just wanting to make sure we put like information, and putting the comments kind of helps us track what is causing the behaviors, or hopefully to track what is causing them. Sometimes there's no cause at all. But if we see that every time you go to Walmart, they are freaking out or having self-interest behaviors, maybe Walmart's the trigger. But that way we can kind of track and see if we can trend to see exactly what's helping, and we can work past those issues and find out, the underlying cause. Another one, did they engage in behavior surrounding inappropriate boundaries, like touching someone's ear, fixing someone's shirt? And that's like they had 2 episodes, and it's specified they touched the staff ear, and then verbal redirection worked great. Putting those redirections as well. So if you had a verbal redirection, hands-on, maybe had to ask them to have the object, whatever it is, and that way we can see what works and doesn't work for that individual. So a quick overview for medical documentation. We have our MAR, and that is all medications being tracked on TheraP through the MAR. It needs to be done daily in real time. You have 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after, just like before. You can do it on your phone through the app, or you can do it on computer, tablet. Even on your phone, if you go to like your browser, you can pull up the TheraP website. I suggest that you at least look at the first of the month, or keep checking on the website itself through the computer, tablet, phone. That is not the app, because they do look different. The app will only show you what's to do today and now. Whereas if you look into the actual website on Therap, you're going to see a bigger picture of the MAR, and you can see if there is any days that you missed, any days that you didn't have. So that's good to just keep checking and making sure that you're documenting properly and you didn't miss anything. You're still expected to complete 3 medication checks. PRN medications require documentation of reason for administering an outcome. There is a way to do that on Therap. You're going to switch to detailed mode, and then you'll document the time it was given, the reason, and then you'll have to go back 30 minutes after, and then update it with the outcome. If individual refuses medication, you'll still document it in Therap, and you'll choose the refused option by checking the box. And initially in the MAR, you're documenting that you've completed all responsibilities associated with medication administration, and you're taking responsibility for any mistakes that they discover later. If there is a time that Therap is down, your internet's down, you're out in the community, you're unable to document on Therap, we understand that happens. It's the world of technology and things go down. So you should always have a separate MAR that is paper that you can document on in case that it does not. And then you can go into the T note in the MAR. It's at the top left, and make a note to explain what happened. So you can put in there, internet was not down, documented on paper. If it's just one day, you can always go into detailed mode and kind of explain there as well and put administered. So you can go back and do it later, but you will need to put a note in there as to you did document on paper and it was given on the right time, just so they know you weren't going in there later and just being like, administered. If you do see that you missed something, you forgot to document, let us know, and IR will need to be put in, just because it is considered a med error if you don't document on time and you did not document on paper. Seizure tracking. All seizures must be tracked and documented thoroughly in Therap. There is a seizure tracking tab, and that is in the health section. You should know about it if your individual has seizures. For anyone with a seizure protocol, seizures resulting in energy were documented under seizure tracking, and an IR must be completed. Typically, it's going to, of course, if there's an injury, or it'll say in your protocol how long the seizure lasts before it is IR worthy, or you have to go to the doctor. If you have any questions about that, please talk to your nurse, Marcy or day program, or whoever. For individuals who do not have a history of seizures or a seizure protocol in place, then any seizure activity reported as an IR and under the seizure tracking. So if someone right now has a seizure, please document in both those places. O2 tracking, if you have it, only needs to occur if it's stated in the person's specific protocol, and then it's done under vital signs tab. I don't know any host home providers who have to track the O2 right off the bat, but if that ever is, or if anybody does, that's where you do that at. And again, you should know this because Marcy would have let you know. And then G-tube tracking, your nurse is going to provide guidance on person-specific documentation and where it needs to be documented. So the IDT, interdisciplinary team, it is anyone considered to be a support to the individual and services. So usually it is the service coordinator, the person themselves, parents, guardians, natural supports, family members, any counselor, psychiatrist, residential staff, advocates, nurse, day program, DVR, just kind of anyone in the team that is of importance and needs to be part of the team in order to support them. Anyone who wants to attend the meeting is signed in to verify attendance for documentation purposes. IDT meetings happen at the request of the individual, but can be requested by other members of the team, especially if we're having big decisions. That's something we will, get the IDT together. When a meeting is called, service coordinator and other program personnel involved in the support of the individual will take note of all topics discussed. These notes are useful in future references. It is important for documenting plans of actions and team members assigned on certain tasks and after the meeting follow-up. For us, we document in TheraP just to keep all the notes there, and then the service coordinator will usually send over notes as well, and we upload those in the same place. That way they can be accessed to, we can kind of know what happened. So if we're like, oh, the service plan hasn't came yet, but we have a question about something, we can go back and look at our notes and see what was discussed. CSR continued stay review often refers to, or it is the annual meeting to review the 100.2 section of the individual service plan. The section in the service plan is focused on the meetings as it determines the levels of support that can be reflected for any changes. Again, another reason why it's important to communicate with your team. So, you know, if there are changes in supports, like if the level of support has increased, you're doing more than you were before. That's something we need to know, because we can possibly, depending on the decline or the need, get a SIS increase, a level increase, temporary, or permanent, just depending. So that's why that documentation is important, because when we send in those SIS reviews or redeterminations for those, they ask us for a lot of documentation because they want to see why the support is needed and the increase. And if we don't have that to back it up, a lot of times they're going to deny it, or we'll have to wait longer to get it so we can get that documentation. So another reason why documentation is so important, because we have to justify anytime we ask for anything. So before CSR, a full review documentation is completed, going back a full year, which is medical appointments. Another reason medical appointments are important to put into TheraP, because Marcy has to run a report and pull all the report or all the appointments for the year. Annual physical, annual eye, annual dental, any counseling appointments. She has to have a full list. And if we're missing anything, then TRE comes back and says, hey, why didn't they get an eye exam this year? Then Marcy has to go back and say, hey, you know, what's going on with this? And it just becomes a big mess. So we look at all the documentation, all the data, update things that need to be done. It's imperative the documentation is up to date and accurate so the team can discuss any changes in the CSR. And then SKSS begins submitting documentation for the meetings 30 days in advance of the scheduled meeting, and ensuring all documentation is accurate and up to date all the time is best practice for making sure that SKSF can officially support your individual during these meetings. If you ever get on a CSR or an annual and we haven't told you specifically that we're not going to be there, please let us know. We've had issues in the past where we don't get the invites. And typically, if your own supervisor can't make it, we'll have somebody in the office sit in, whether it be one of the other supervisors or myself. We always try to make it just at least part of the meeting. So there shouldn't really ever be a time when we're not on the meetings. So just let us know, give us a call the on-call phone, reach out however you can to let us know, hey, this CSR or this, you know, it's going on, you're not here, so we can make sure that we are there. Assist level review, like I was stating before, is an IDT meeting that's held when the IDT believe that person's support intensity scale or SIS level does not meet the person's need. A CSR is heavily dependent on documentation across individual supports and services. So making sure that documentation is in there, whether it's data log notes, BISSP, IRs, wherever you can document to show that that support level is needed. Accurate and consistent documentation over a significant period of time, effectively showing behavioral changes, medical changes, and efforts to support the individual which have failed and will be requested. Not having documentation that captures changes in the individual's needs put them at risk of not receiving supports they may need to maintain at exceptional quality of life. We want to support them, and if we can't support them the best we can, then their quality of life is going to go down. So it's just, as a provider, it is your job and responsibility to make sure that you're documenting those things and communicating with us. It may need to be another trackers put in, or just make sure we're documenting and submitting IRs like we're supposed to. Human Rights Committee, HRC, it convenes to review any psychotropic medication and rights modifications and restrictions. Reviews are done annually by HRC and reviewed by the IDT more frequently. Documentation needed for HRC packet includes 3 months of consistent BISSP tracking. Like I stated before, if there are blank spaces, they will send it back and tell me that I need all of the dates consistent with a yes or no. IRs updated, psychiatric medication list with Ames test, dated within 1 year, notice of suspension for any rights or modification, informed consents, updated comprehensive life review, and additional information the IDT feels would be necessary to justify the request being made. So basically anything that we put out there, whether it's rights restrictions, psychotropic medications, we have to justify those. We can't just be like, oh, well, the provider feels they're necessary. They're going to ask what we've tried before. So if you're asking for a lock on the refrigerator, they're going to ask what has been tried before the lock on the refrigerator. Have we tried redirection? Have we tried to put something in there where it goes off like an alarm? They want the least restrictive measure to go in place before we asked for bigger things. Support staff such as HHP may be asked to update information for these reviews, and you will also be asked to be on it to kind of justify why it is needed. So for assist level review, we want to make sure that all tracking is complete and with enough information. Even if it's significant, helping with transfers, bathing, constant redirection of behaviors, it should still be documented in some way, especially true if these supports may not have been always part of your daily needs. I know everyone, especially when you have someone in your house for a long time, you just kind of get used to it. And when you slowly progress to doing more, it doesn't affect you as bad as when it's a very drastic change. But even the little things, just documenting those, we need to make sure, because eventually you're going to be like, hey, I'm doing a lot. I think the support level needs to be up. And if we don't have the things to document to prove that, we're going to get denied. And then that just brings the process out longer. Documenting discussions at doctor's appointments can make a difference during a CLR as well. The note that are received from medical providers are not complete overview of what happened during the appointment. So if there's something specific that the person may need and a doctor is suggesting it, get it in writing, and we can definitely have that as proof and backup to what is being needed. Document efforts made to help the client improve on behaviors or medical issues. This is one question that's always asked during a review. What has been done to meet the individual's support needs? What supports have been put into place? What resources have been utilized? Why have these attempts been unsuccessful? If efforts are not documented, then they never happen. So if we have someone who has some behavioral issues and they're getting worse, one thing would be, are they going to therapy? Are they seeing a behavioral therapist? And those are things that we want us to try before they increased a support level. Your IR expectations when documenting the incident. It's required that HHP calls the on-call phone when a GER is being submitted. If it's during business hours, still call the on-call phone just to make sure that it is, because if your supervisor is out and you call and you leave a message and it's business hours, they may not get that till the next business day. So it's pertinent that you call the on-call phone and at least leave a message, send a text message, just depending on the severity of it, just so we know that it is coming through. And that gives you another layer of documentation for all incidents. You called, you let us know. GERS must be submitted within 24 hours of the requested time frame, especially for criticals, because we need those as soon as possible, because they have to get them out to TRE, or your CCV has to get them out as well. So we have a very short time frame to get those, and we have to do follow-up, and there's things that we have to do in order to make sure that they are done. So we can't wait till the last minute. Staff person on call will give you a time frame to have a GER submitted. For our on-call phone, we will return your call in an hour, or at least an hour. So if we don't answer, just leave a message detailed and then we will call you back with what you need to do. Obviously, if it's a life or death situation, please call 911 first. Don't call us. Call us afterwards, after everybody is fine and stable. But if the house is on fire, please don't call me. You should know to call 911, not me, because that's what I'm going to tell you to do. I'm going to tell you to call 911. Every detail, no matter how small, needs to be included in every GUR. And then if ever in doubt, include it. So I would say you can never have too much information. If there's something that shouldn't be in there, like we don't want a lot of other people's names. Usually we would refer to them a housemate, HHP, whoever they are. Try to refrain from names unless it's about the individual themselves that the IR is for. We can always send them back if they need to be updated. Another reason why getting them in as soon as possible is important, because if I need you to update something or change something or add something, I'll send them back to you and you'll have to do that and reset it. Documenting all details in the GUR before being submitted allows the IDT to better assess the needs of the individual. If you have any questions, please let me know. And then just go ahead and take the test, and you'll have 30 minutes. You can come back in, it'll give you an access code. You have 30 minutes. If for some reason something happens and I need to resend it for you, let me know. But if you have questions, let me know. Thank you.